Thank you, Director Medaffer. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll and announce whether a quorum is present?
Director Acosta.
Here.
Flessy.
Here.
Katz.
Here.
Paul.
Yes, present.
Coates Hedberg.
Here.
Scolzetti.
Here.
Vice Chair Hilliker.
Here.
Director Yamani.
Here.
Leahy.
Here.
Myers.
Present.
Director Croucher is absent. Roback.
Present.
Quaylen.
Here.
Heidemann.
Here.
Norman.
Here.
Wall.
Here.
Abdullahi.
Here.
Ayala. Buckowitz. Fong Sakai.
Present.
Macedo.
Here.
Medaffer.
Here.
Molina is absent. Chair Serrano.
Here.
Director Vespi.
Here.
Whitburn.
Here.
Secretary Lyons.
Here.
Director Freehoff.
Here.
Castaneda.
Here.
Boyd Hodgson is absent. Director Arant. Miller.
Here.
Ray.
Here.
And Supervisor Desmond is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have any proxies?
We have one proxy today. Director Roback is the proxy for Director Croucher.
Duly noted. Item 4 is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on items of interest within the subject matter of the board. Each speaker will be given 2 minutes. Are there any public speakers?
I will call on in-person speaker requests first, followed by any virtual requests. As stated, public speakers have 2 minutes to make your comments. First speaker, Suzanne Till. Please step up to the podium. You may begin your comments.
My name is Suzanne Till. Can I restart again because the mic went off, please? Thank you. My name is Suzanne Till. I'm a director for Division 2, Padre Dam Municipal Water District. Today I'm speaking as a private citizen of Santee. The San Diego County Water Authority water supplies from Channelside, Carlsbad desalination plants and water transfers from the Imperial Irrigation District are probably the most expensive developed water supplies in the state of California. Subsequently, San Diego County ratepayers use less and less water, yet ratepayer water bills continue to increase. And I'm talking as an East County resident. East San Diego County ratepayers cannot bail out San Diego County Water Authority's business failure by paying water rate increases year after year. In fact, between 2022 to 2028, given the current predictions, San Diego County Water Authority rates will increase by approximately 50%. The most alarming San Diego County Water Authority business transaction is the take-or-pay contract for the desalinated water produced in Carlsbad. This contract guarantees profit for private investors of Channelside, a for-profit company located in Europe. Channelside's take-or-pay contracts with San Diego County Water Authority demonstrates how privatized water can breach the public trust of California's coastal and water resources. County Water Authority staff state that Channelside's desalinated water makes San Diego County drought-proof. I ask the board to consider the true cost of continuing take-or-pay contracts. You're talking about selling water at 4,000 to 5,000 acre feet. And my ask is, when are these take-or-pay contracts going to end? And when are we going to get out of those contracts? You want to establish trust with the public? Then work to get rid of the take-or-pay contracts with Channelside. And one other comment. Why are you putting rate increases in consent? I know as a director, I would never let that at Padre Dam.
Thank you for your comments.
And I thank you very much.
Kim Hales, you may begin now.
Hello, as she said, my name is Kim Hales. I am a director of Padre Dam Municipal Water District in Division 4, but I am here today to speak as a private citizen from East County. I reside in Alpine, and I'm also a professor of biology at Cuyamaca College for over 20 years now. I'd like to speak a little bit on the water conservation garden. I was encouraged to hear the committee earlier at least recommend to continue funding for the garden for the next 2 years. But I found some of the arguments against support for the garden somewhat contradictory. Pulling support from the garden was given as a reason to be fiscally responsible in the face of these water rate increases that are going to occur. But you need to remember that when water rates increase, people seek out ways to conserve and to save money. And on the surface, the San Diego County Water Authority seems to support at least that. However, if you're going then to pull support from an institution that is very big in educating the public on water conservation and sustainability, that's what I find very contradictory. I know one of the directors during the meeting pointed out that this is the one entity that that supports water. I also noticed on the San Diego County Water Authority's website, there is a link that you can go to learn about water conservation and landscaping and things. And when you click on that, it takes you to a company that provides courses from LA. You can go to in-person courses in Long Beach or LA, or you can watch virtually. Why are you not supporting this water conservation garden, which is local?
Your time is up.
So
Thank
I
you for
ask
your
that
comments.
you at least do that. Thank you.
Mr. Tom Kennedy, you may begin now.
I'm not there yet. Thank you, Kelly. I'll try to make this quick. I got a lot of things to say, as you know. First off, I wasn't able to be here on the day she was recognized, but I want to recognize Fern Steiner for all of her commitment to this agency for many decades, and she was a mentor to me when I first came on this board so long ago. Also, congrats to Director Ayala for another two-time victim, I would say, of appointment here. I think that a couple of bullet points here with regard to the PSAR process, and I encourage this board to not only retain it but expand it and perhaps increase the credit for it. You'll find a way to show it makes financial sense, because it's better to get 50 cents on the dollar than 0 cents on the dollar. You need to sell more water. Also, I noted in the board packet about some of the options related to the budget, and the rates were based on aspirational future savings of costs in the future. I'm not sure if that's the best type of policy decision making to be made, and I encourage, as I have from this dais previously, for the board to look at a scenario by 2035 of selling 150,000 acre feet or less. Yeah, that's a worst case scenario, but I think it'll set a benchmark for you to gauge where you're at, and you could do some planning now for if you get there. If we had done something similar 10 years ago to forecast where we are now today, we could have had time to get there, but that wasn't an opportunity we had as a board. With regard to the Brownstein contract that's coming up, I think you have all the in-house staff here in-house to support the MWD delegates, and there's no reason to blow another 50 grand, 500 grand on that. And finally, and most importantly, I want to congratulate the board on the Met settlement. And while Chair Serrano deserves credit for being there as a current leader, I don't think any of this would happen without Mel Katz and the leadership he brought during his tenure. Many chairs during my 10 years on this board promised settlement of that, but there was always either personal or other sorts of things that got in the way, and Mel brought a level of pragmatism to the process.
Thank you for your comments.
Also, congrats to Dan and Dave for getting it done. That's it.
Thank you. That concludes our in-person requests. If there are public speakers in the Zoom waiting room, please raise your hand through the Zoom app or press *9 if listening by phone. I have no further requests, Chair Serrano.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I'd like to thank all the members of the public who came and offered their comments today, especially my former colleague, Director Kennedy. Thank you very much. We will move on to item 5, additions to the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any additions?
We have no additions.
Thank you. We will move on to the approval of minutes. Item 6 before us is the approval of the minutes from the formal Board of Directors meeting of May 22nd, 2025. I'll entertain a motion for approval. I have a motion from Director Scalzetti, a second from Vice Chair Hilliker. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Acosta?
Yes.
Flessy?
Yes.
Katz?
Yes.
Paul? Director Paul?
Yes, approved.
Coates Hedberg?
Yes.
Scalzetti?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hilliker?
Yes.
Director Yamani?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Roback?
Yes.
Quaylen?
Yes.
Heidemann?
Yes.
Norman?
Yes.
Wall?
Yes.
Abdullahi?
Yes.
Ayala? Bakowitz? Fong Sakai? Macedo?
Abstain.
Madaffer? Chair Serrano?
Yes.
Director Vespi?
Yes.
Whitburn?
Yes.
Secretary Lyons?
Yes.
Director Freehoff?
Yes.
Castaneda?
Yes.
Arant? Miller?
Yes.
And Ray.
Yes.
Thank you. Minutes pass.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 7 is our presentations of public hearings for which there are none, which will bring me to my chair's report, item 8A. First, I do just want to point out, it's been mentioned several times throughout this meeting, but just take a moment to say that this is our first Board of Directors meeting with the 15-year litigation with Metropolitan finally behind us. I was truly honored to participate in the signing ceremony on June 2nd here at the Water Authority's HQ with many of our colleagues from Met and many of you all in this room. I again want to express my thanks and appreciation to Chair Emeritus Mel Katz, who started us down this path, as well as our General Manager Dan Denham and General Counsel David Edwards, as well as their counterparts at Met. Truly, we had a collective vision to get this done and the willingness to keep coming back to the table to resolve any outstanding disputes. And I believe the winner out of all of it will be our ratepayers. And as I said during the budget and rate hearing, my priority now is start putting together opportunities with our general manager and input from all of you to sell excess water supplies and execute upon those to the benefit of all the ratepayers of San Diego County. Now, on a separate note, in the next week, you'll receive an email that includes an evaluation survey and feedback request for the upcoming general manager's evaluation. The deadline to return the evaluation forms is July 17th, 2025. Please send all completed surveys to the clerk of the board, Kelly Walker. The general manager survey results and feedbacks will be discussed during closed session at the July 24th board meeting, and action will be taken at the August 28th board meeting. That will conclude my chair's report. Moving on to item 8B, Madam Clerk, will you please provide a report of actions taken today?
We'll get those committee reports up on the screen. Admin and Finance Committee noted and filed the monthly Treasurer's Report. They authorized the General Manager to refund Carlsbad MWD $179,769.51 for overcollected charges related to Carlsbad desal plant operations for fiscal year 24. They authorized recommended budget cuts to the Board of Directors budget for fiscal years 26 and 27 in the amount of $122,855. They directed staff to maintain existing CIP practices and hold a special board workshop to engage the board on current practices. They directed staff to negotiate a memorandum of understanding with the Water Conservation Authority for a fixed Water Authority contribution of $50,000 in fiscal year 26, while leaving in place the Water Authority's letter of intent to withdraw effective June 30, 2025. They adopted the General Manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 26 and 27, which included approval of Resolution 2025-14, approving the GM's recommended budget for fiscal years 26 and 27 for operations and capital improvements and appropriating $1,897,402,674. They approved the amended classification and salary schedule for fiscal year 25, approved classification and salary schedule for fiscal year 26. Upon final year-end closing financials, they directed staff to use any excess revenue or undesignated revenue to defeasing Water Authority debt and maximize contribution into the Rate Stabilization Fund. Starting July 1st, 2025, Water Authority staff will return to the board quarterly to provide quarterly budget monitoring reports for action and discussion. And also directed General Manager to work with the Chair and Member Agency Managers Work Group on a proposed board policy setting board's financial metrics and priorities for direction, including discussion of any excess or undesignated revenues collected, which shall be brought to the board for consideration at the adoption of the LRFP. Adopted Water Authority rates and charges for calendar year 26 using option 3, utilize future savings and defer fiscal year 26 new debt issuance for approximate 8.3% effective calendar year 26 to include Ordinance 2501. Sorry, next slide. Ordinance 2025-01, setting rates and charges for the delivery and supply of water, use of facilities, and provision of services. Resolution 2515, continuing standby availability charge. Ordinance 2502, amending and restating system capacity and water treatment capacity charges. Ordinance 2503, amending and restating the permanent special agricultural water rate program. Directed staff to explore future permanent special agricultural water rate program funding alternatives for implementation no sooner than January 1, 27. Directed staff to update adopted fiscal year 26 and 27 budget to reflect the option 2 rates and charges, and find the actions exempt from SDCWA pursuant to Public Resources Code 21080B8, and authorize the General Manager to file a notice of exemption. They also authorize GM to purchase $41 million in liability insurance, if we can move on, for fiscal year 26 from Cal Mutual's J Prima in the amount of $734,000. Property insurance for fiscal year 26 from Swiss Reinsurance in the amount of $306,488, and workers' comp from Cal Mutual's J Prima in the amount of $460,206. Total amount $1,500,694. Property insurance deductibles will increase from $50,000 to $75,000 per occurrence. $75,000. LPO meeting was deferred to July 24. Water planning was deferred. Imported water authorized an amendment to the JPA to extend the existing proportional funding shares of the 6 member agencies of the Colorado River Board for 1 year, from July 1, 25 to June 30, 26. I will just make a note, 9.9 is actually 9.10. 9.9 is still on the consent calendar. It is a bill, LPO. Adopt a position of support on AB 523. Consent calendar is 9.1 through 9.10. That concludes my report.
I'll first ask if there's any discussion on that bill that anyone wanted to offer. Hearing none. Excuse me. Director Fong-Sakai.
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible to pull item number 9.5 off consent, please?
Sure thing. Yes.
And I think there was a correction on 9.7F. It said to adjust the budget based on option 2, but I believe it would have been option 3 of the rates. Yes. That one, yeah, option. I think that's a correction, right? Okay.
Thank you for that. We will revise that to say option 3.
Thank you. So item 9.5 has been pulled by Director Fong-Sakai. I have now Director Arant.
No, I was just going to make the same point. Option number.
Thank you. System's a little slow today. Director Acosta.
Yes, I recused myself on the agenda item that relates to the Carlsbad Municipal Water District because I serve on the Board of Directors, and would do so again on consent. That's 9.2.
Duly noted.
Thank you, noted.
On the balance of the consent calendar, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Director Katz, a second from Director Medaffer, with item 9.5 being pulled. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on the balance?
Director Acosta.
Yes.
Flessy.
Yes, abstain from 9.2.
Katz.
Yes.
Paul.
Paul is a no on 9.6 and 9.7. Yes on the other items.
Thank you. Coates Hedberg.
Yes.
Scalzetti.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hilliker.
Yes.
Director Yamani.
Yes.
Leahy.
No on 9.6, 9.7. Yes on balance.
Thank you. Myers.
Yes.
Roback.
Yes.
Quaylen.
Yes.
Heidemann.
Yes.
Norman.
Yes.
Wall.
No on 9.7 and 9.8. Yes on the others.
Thank you. Abdullahi. Ayala.
Yes.
Buckowitz.
Yes.
Fong-Sakai. Macedo.
Yes.
Medaffer.
Yes.
Chair Serrano.
Yes.
Director Vespi.
Yes.
Whitburn.
No on 9.7, yes on the balance.
Thank you. Secretary Lyons.
Yes.
Director Freehoff.
Yes.
Castaneda.
Yes.
Arant.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Ray.
No on 9.7, yes on the balance.
Thank you. Consent calendar passes.
So I'll now turn to Director Fonseca for discussion on item 9.5.
I thought it was just option 3. I'm wondering if I'm
As I had stated during the open session, I do understand the importance of the Water Conservation Garden. I think they do an amazing job with the education program and the outreach. But my concern now is the finances of this organization. And with that, I have severe concerns about continuing to fund programs when we ourselves are struggling with paying all of our obligations.
Director Scalzetti.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve staff's recommendation of option 2 of the staff recommendation for the water garden funding.
Second.
Is that, to be clear, is that the item that's on the screen or option 2 that's included in the board packet?
Option 2 that was included in the board packet.
Understood. And so I have a motion and a second from Director Scalzetti and Director Castaneda. Turn it to the General Counsel to explain.
So the material thing is what's contained within the motion. The reference is back to the board packet, which is different than what's on the screen. So we're going to read what is described as option 2 in the board packet, but is the subject to the motion that Director Scalzetti just made, and then we'll vote on that.
So option 2, original staff recommendation was direct staff to negotiate a memorandum of understanding with the Water Conservation Authority for fixed water authority contributions of $100,000 in fiscal year 26 and $50,000 in fiscal year 27, while leaving in place the Water Authority's letter of intent to withdraw from the Conservation Authority effective June 30, 2025.
Director Abdullahi.
I will say, I thought we would be spending a lot more time on rates than the Conservation Garden funding. But in light of the tough decisions that we had to make today, as someone who in any other scenario would absolutely be supporting this garden, I will be voting no.
Additional discussion. Director Scalzetti, and then
Thank you, Chair. I just want to remind my colleagues that this is a benefit for the public that the public can use. I think that we do look at cutting some of these services and clubs that we're in, but this one is directly related to our business here. It is a point where our public and our ratepayers can go and find alternatives to their water rates, alternatives to their problems with fire and things that endanger their home and their livelihoods. And I think it's necessary that we continue the continuity with this water garden. It's really budget dust, which I do understand that we're trying to make a difference, but this is actually in our wheelhouse. This isn't frivolous. So I really encourage my colleagues to take another look at this and carry it forward. Thank you.
I've just been informed by the General Counsel that he's got a clarification. General Counsel.
Okay, so the recommendation that comes from the standing committee is just that, a recommendation. If this board makes a material modification to the recommendation, which this revised motion would be, if the A&F committee does not approve it with a majority within the board plus the A&F committee all in agreement as a majority to the change, then it goes back to the committee as a modified recommendation. So nothing is going to happen today with respect to funding the water conservation garden if it's not the motion that is on the screen right now. It will go back and we'll be dealing with this next month.
What? I've never heard of that.
The board approves a motion.
Where's the citation in the admin code that says that, please? I'd like to see that.
200085C.
Pull it up.
The board approves a motion for action that changes the nature or is materially different from a committee recommendation, in which case the vote of the board shall be deemed to constitute preliminary consideration of the matter and approval of action to refer back to the committee.
What was the section again?
2.00.085C1.
Yeah, we've been doing it wrong for 20 years, I know.
There was, if this had been a motion to withdraw the letter because there was time would be of the essence, we could do something different. Or if the A&F committee would have voted to say time was of the essence, it could carry. But these are recommendations that the board makes, and the admin code gives the board the standing committee rather the opportunity to revisit, unless the majority of the committee, as you'll see in E, concurs.
I just chair the meeting, everybody.
Is it may or shall? And again, I'm still trying to find the section. You said 085B?
Shall be referred back to the committee for reevaluation.
Where's this in B?
C.
C.
Meanwhile, we have a motion on the table.
We do. Director Coates-Hedberg.
Well, there's nothing that keeps the committee from reconvening right now either.
To complement what Director Scouse said, he said, you know, this is not the city of San Diego. This is the San Diego County Water Authority, and we're all board members together, working together as an investment for our 22 agencies. And just to, you know, echo what we just saw previously from Metropolitan Water District, Don Ortega, you go to their climate website, and I just want to quote, whatever is done should be done for the benefit of the whole. And whatever is done for the benefit of the whole should be shared by the parts. This is us, the board, and we're here to work together. It's not what the garden has done for us, it's what we can do at the garden. And we could be that voice on value propositions, on reducing greenhouse gases. There's so much we can do at that garden. It is our garden. And I'm just curious, you know, when Lois, you're saying about, you know, the cost of $50,000, how much is it that in our budget for the Citizens Water Academy? I asked specifically to our general manager for a copy of the public affairs budget. I did not get that. And all I got was if the board decided to put the $150,000 one year and $150,000 the next year, we can make it happen, and that it wouldn't affect the rates. So sorry, I don't mean to yell. I want to just say that I think we need to look at what our mission is here in serving water to our customers and making sure that the customers are educated in how they can conserve and all the things that we can do at this garden. That's all. Thank you. Sorry.
Director Yamani.
Through the chair, is it the will of the board or the will of the committee?
The committee makes a recommendation. The board approves that recommendation.
Director Leahy.
Call the question.
You need to vote on calling the question under our admin code. There's no debate on that. So if you have a second, then you can vote on call the question. There's no debate on call the question. So just vote on call the question.
Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Voting on call, the question, Director Acosta?
Yes.
Flessy?
Yes.
Katz?
Yes.
Hall?
No.
Coates Hedberg? Scalzetti?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hilliker? Director Yamani?
Sorry, call the question of
The motion that's on the table is Director Scalzetti's motion, which is the original recommendation 2, which was 100,000 over 2 years with the MOU.
So that's the motion.
No, this is just to have a vote on the motion without any more debate.
No.
Leahy?
Yes.
Myers? Roback?
Yes.
Quaylen?
Yes.
Heidemann?
No.
Norman? Wall?
No.
Abdullahi?
Yes.
Ayala? Bakowitz? Fong Sakai?
Aye.
Macedo?
Yes.
Madaffer?
Yep.
I'm sorry? Chair Serrano?
Yes.
Director Vespi?
Yes.
Whitburn?
Yes.
Secretary Lines?
Yes.
Director Freehoff?
Yes.
Castaneda?
Yes.
Arant? Director Miller?
Yes.
And Director Ray?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Make the call.
So now we will vote on the motion made by Director Scalzetti and seconded by, I think it was Secretary Hilliker, or Vice Chair Hilliker?
Castaneda.
Or Castaneda, excuse me.
Kelly, we need to track the ANF committee members' votes as well as the board's votes,
Back
even if it's just informally.
to committee. Next month, right?
Remember, parks, libraries, fishing, gardening, all the good stuff. This is for the people. It actually is for the people. All right, I'm just letting you know. Just letting you know.
Why don't you just call the committee first, and then we'll know right away.
Whitburn shuts down garden. Sends all those old ladies to the street. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. Green thumbs are at the curb.
Okay, so we're calling the vote on the original staff recommendation. We had moved by
Scalzetti, seconded by Cardenas.
Castaneda.
Castaneda. Sorry, Fred.
Okay, Director Acosta?
Yes.
Flessy?
Confused. What am I voting on?
We're voting on the original staff recommendation, which was the 100,000 and then the 50,000.
No.
Katz?
Yes.
Hall?
No.
Coates Hedberg?
Absolutely.
Scalzetti? Vice Chair Hilliker?
Reluctantly, yes.
Director Yamani?
Yes.
Leahy?
No.
Myers?
No.
I'm sorry. Myers?
No.
Roback?
Yes.
Quaylen?
No.
Heidemann?
No.
Norman? Wall? Abdullahi?
No.
Ayala? Bakowitz?
No.
Fong Sakai?
No.
Macedo?
No.
Madaffer?
Nope.
Chair Serrano?
No.
Director Vespi?
No.
Whitburn?
No.
Secretary Lyons?
Yes.
Director Freehoff?
No.
Castaneda?
Yes.
Arant? Miller?
No.
Director Ray?
No.
1 minute. The motion failed to pass, 69.3295%.
Vice Chair Hilker.
I'd like to move the option 2 that's on the screen.
Second.
I have a motion from Vice Chair Hilliker, a second from Director Freehoff. Director Freehoff, do you want to still speak?
What I wanted to speak on. Thank you.
All righty. And Director Myers. It says your name right here. Okay. Anything else? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Okay, Director Acosta.
Yes.
Blessy.
Yes.
Katz.
Yes.
Paul.
No.
Coates Hedberg.
Yes.
Galzetti. Vice Chair Hilliker.
Yes.
Director Yamani.
Yes.
Leahy.
No.
Myers.
Yes.
Roback.
Yes.
Quaylen.
Yes.
Heidemann.
No.
Norman. Wall.
No.
Abdullahi.
No.
Ayala.
No.
Bakowitz.
No.
Fong Sakai. No. Macedo.
Yes.
Medaffer.
Nope.
Chair Serrano.
No.
Director Vespi. Is that a no?
No.
Thank you. Whitburn.
No.
Secretary Lyons.
Yes.
Director Freehoff.
Yes.
Castaneda.
Yes.
Arant.
Yes.
Miller. Director Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. Ray.
No.
Thank you. 1 second. Motion failed to pass. No, 55.825.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That will conclude our consent calendar. Moving on to item 10 is our action, discussion, and information items. Item 10.1 is director appointments and reappointments. I'd like to announce the reappointment of directors Ismahan Abdullahi and Lois Fong Sakai, both representing the city of San Diego. Director Abdullahi's new term end date is February 24, 2031, and Director Fong Sakai's new term date is October 27, 2030. Congratulations to both of you on your reappointments. Next is the appointment of Director Jimmy Ayala, representing the city of San Diego. Director Ayala is filling the seat left vacant following the retirement of Director Fern Steiner. He will be seated on the Engineering and Operations Committee and the Imported Water Committee. Welcome back, Director Ayala. Would you like to make any comments at this time? Okay. Also joining our board is Director Simeon B. Williams, Jr., representing Camp Pendleton. Director Williams will be seated on the A&F Committee and the Legislation and Public Outreach Committee. We welcome him to the Board of Directors. We have 2 action items on today's agenda. General Counsel Edwards will present items 10.2 and 10.3.
Thank you. Item 10.2 and 10.3, while wholly separate contracts, are complementary to one another. Item 10.2 is a legal services agreement in the amount of $595,000, not to exceed that amount, for vital and ongoing legal services related to issues surrounding the Colorado River and the quantification settlement agreement. This is a component of agreement that has been in effect at the Water Authority for many years. It was renewed 2 years ago without much conversation. I think most, if not all of you, are familiar with that component of that contract. The one modification this year, which is different than in past years, is that it also incorporates discretionary as-needed services to facilitate the deployment of additional firm resources in the event that they're needed. Specifically, Chris Fromm has been added to that contract as a authorized biller to provide legal services when, in the general counsel in consultation with the general manager, we believe it's necessary to request work in support of the Water Authority's mission. The second contract, which will be voted on separately, is a non-legal services contract, a strategic advice contract with Chris Farm with the same firm, a retainer contract, which is not an as-needed, in the amount of $20,000 a month with a not-to-exceed amount of $480,000. That contract will provide delegate support to the metropolitan delegates on a monthly basis. They will be, again, voted on separately. We'll take questions on the first contract if there are any. If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Director Medaffer.
Thank you. And since the GC says 10.2 and 10.3 are complementary, I'm glad we're hearing them together.
They'll be voted on separately, though.
Well, I don't know about that, because my motion is going to be we combine the two contracts, 10.2 and 10.3, into one contract. Can use the first contract. Yeah, I don't need that on the screen yet. We can use the first contract, 10.2, as the model and change the reporting of this contract to the GM, as has been done over the last 20 years. Specifically, I want to continue a single contract for legal services at contract amounts that are indicated in the two different items, 594.5 and 480, with privilege, as discussed and agreed with the general manager. I also want the contract to indicate that they report to and the management by the general manager, as been the case over the last 20 plus years. And the third part of my motion is that we'd authorize the general manager to execute the contract consistent with these requirements. So that's my motion.
Unfortunately, the motion is not founded. It is contrary to the admin code. And while I'll go through all the reasons that it doesn't fit within the admin code, primarily, the general counsel is vested as the chief legal officer of the organization. So the only entities that can hire and manage outside counsel are general counsel's office and the board, then managed by the board. There can be no delegation of legal services to the general manager. And I'll go through that in a few minutes. But, you know, I'm a little perplexed. I'd heard that we were going to have this conversation. I'm surprised that awarding a $20,000 a month contract is generating so much contention. But I can see that you're deeply invested in Ms. Fromm and the Brownstein firm, serving as a lawyer to the Water Authority. But I want to remind everyone here that Brownstein is and will continue to be providing legal advice on the Colorado River and QSA matters as they've previously done, and that work remains privileged going forward. Focusing on Ms. Fromm's continued retention as a lawyer for this organization in the retained, not as needed capacity as in MWD delegate support, that's a different matter entirely. And I've addressed these following issues and analysis, among other issues, with board officers, metropolitan delegates, all without objection to this point on the proposed hybrid path forward that was just presented. As you've heard several times today, on June 2nd, 2025, we, along with MET, here at the Water Authority, signed an agreement that ended 15 years of protracted and acrimonious litigation. During that press event, where you stood behind me, Director Medaffer, when I signed, speeches were made by the respective general managers and board chairs. We shook hands, congratulated each other, and the overarching theme that emerged was a new era of cooperation and transparency between our agencies. Those of us who were in the settlement negotiations were in attendance at that event. Those that were not involved were absent. We are changing the nature of our engagement with Ms. Fromm as it relates to the MWD program because the fundamental nature of the Water Authority's relationship with MWD has changed, thereby negating the Water Authority's need to retain legal counsel to address issues of ordinary business that exist between our two agencies. In our current environment, any advice provided by Ms. Fromm as strategic advisor will concern matters related to climate plans we heard today, general manager selections and business planning, etc. None of these stated components, or those not mentioned but certainly foreseeable, have as their dominant purpose the solicitation or provision of legal advice. In California, improperly asserting the attorney-client privilege can have serious consequences. It can lead to sanctions, loss of privilege, and even ethical violations. To avoid this, attorneys and clients must understand the scope of the privilege and its limitations. The privilege protects confidential communications between lawyer and client made for the purpose of seeking or providing legal advice, not the ordinary course of business. I, in consultation with ethics counsel, Fred Galante, many of you know, he predates me, have determined upon a thorough review of the work requested by the Water Authority's MWD program and its delegation that continue to retaining legal counsel for those purposes would subject the Water Authority and the General Counsel's Office to an unreasonable risk resulting from the potential improper assertion of the attorney-client privilege on a go-forward basis. This decision and analysis, however, does not affect or make comment upon the work previously performed, as that work has been undertaken pursuant to a legal service contract that expires on June 30, 2025, and enjoys the assertion of privilege without discussion of any waiver, of course, subject to potential judicial oversight. I, along with the general manager, the board chair, and officers, are simply trying to preserve the integrity of the organization and prevent a negative judicial outcome should we ever be challenged. Sometimes legal questions are difficult and nuanced, but in this case it's simple. There's a right and there's a wrong, and there's simply no basis to continue a privileged contract to serve as the eye in the sky at MWD on the Water Authority's behalf in order to artificially protect that work from public scrutiny. If legal issues arise, they will be handled by my office or through the companion Brownstein contract previously discussed. In the end, advocating to continue a legal services agreement for delicate support in this context is simply an effort to find a problem in order to provide a solution. And with that, I will just say that the motion is misplaced because the admin code, as I said, vests retention of special counsel with the general counsel. The only exception is this board could elect to retain special counsel, have an ad hoc committee that oversees it, and that's separate and apart from either Dan or myself. If the board wants a statutory interpretation discussion, I'm happy to go on. But as I just stated, the motion is misplaced and is not available for a second or a vote.
Well, I'll respond in kind, Mr. Edwards, and I think you're trying to pull a fast one on this board, and I'm not going to let you do it. You're not the judge. You're not the jury. Decisions are vested by this board, period. And let's not ever forget that. We run this show, not you. And, you know, first of all, these two items should really be in closed session, and it's a disgrace that they're not.
I'm going to stop you right there.
No,
Director
don't. Let me finish.
Let me go through, would you like me to go through the six
No, why
categories
don't
of
you
closed
listen
session?
to me for a little
I will
bit?
go through the 6 categories of closed session if you'd like.
No,
Because
why
you're
don't you
telling
let
me
me
it should be in
finish,
closed
Mr.
session.
Edwards?
Tell me which section you would have it on.
Sir, your conduct is unbecoming of the general counsel. Please let the board member finish.
Thank you. You know, as I said, I believe this discussion should be in closed session. But since the general counsel doesn't agree, I'm sorry if I'm going to be airing a little dirty laundry here. I'll start with what I don't think the general counsel actually knows what he's talking about. I really question the ability right now in serving this agency. You know, through these two contracts, he's frankly manipulating this board and frankly affecting our agency's ability to do business. You know, behind the scenes, as you've obviously heard so far, there's been a lot of discussion between the general manager, the general counsel, on how this matter should be handled. You know, a simple solution would have been to apply just simply common legal advice, allow both these contracts to be merged into a single privileged contract between outside counsel and the general manager. You know, the general counsel indicates, you know, what I think is a complete lack of knowledge about MWD and how we operate when it comes to dealing with the Colorado River. I haven't seen one citation backing up any of the assertions. There's been nothing, no memos, nothing, no proof to me or this board backing up anything he's saying. He references Fred Galante as outside ethics counsel, but is there a legal memo to prove these things? You know, why hasn't that been shared with this board? There's nothing in the admin code to the Water Authority that prevents the board from hiring a law firm with privilege that reports to the general manager. And I could go through things out of Chapter 4.04. The general manager may procure services, including professional services, consistent with approved budget. More importantly, it states the term general manager includes general counsel for procurements by the office of the general counsel, but it does not state the reverse, meaning the general counsel does not have the exclusive procurement authority over all legal services authority-wide. Also under professional services, section 4.04.170, The procedures for hiring professional services, i.e. attorneys, consultants, appear to apply for both the general manager and the general counsel, depending on which office is initiating the contract. There's no language mandating in the admin code that all legal services must be controlled by or report to the general counsel. In fact, for many years, I can remember on MWD, when I first got on this board, the general counsel at the time, Dan Henschke, had to leave the room when we went into closed session on MWD. Why? Because the GC was not party to those discussions for reasons I won't get into here. Reporting structure. Nowhere does the administrative code explicitly state that outside legal counsel must report to the general counsel. The code is silent on whether legal counsel hired by the board or the general manager must report through the general counsel's office. And the board has ultimate oversight. Contracts over $150,000 require board approval. So if outside counsel is retained by the general manager exceeds this threshold, the board must approve the contract. So the conclusion of this is there is no legal or administrative restriction in the Water Authority's code that would prevent the general manager from hiring outside legal counsel reporting directly to the general manager, so long as the procurement follows it. So the other thing to talk about is privilege. And you don't have to be in litigation to retain lawyers that include privilege. To suggest otherwise, to me, can suggest a complete lack of understanding of what countless government agencies practice on a regular basis. So now I'd like you to put up the screen, if you would. So
James, if you can share that.
So what I found, and this was in a PRA that went to the newspaper, the Water Authority has something like 23 contracts with outside law firms. Here they are on the screen. I highlighted them all. Now, I assume all of these have privilege. However, I haven't heard lately we have 23 pending lawsuits floating around. Therefore, to me, it's a ridiculous assertion that these contracts with lawyers providing legal advice are not covered by attorney-client privilege. And so, you know, the idea that the GC is trying to convince this board that the contract with Fromm advising us on MWD matters, which will include the Colorado River, which will include PVID, Coachella, IID, and other things as we relate to MWD actions. They're all integrated, as you just heard from Adon Ortega. That's why the privilege needs to be in place for that contract as well. We cannot afford, and this is not about litigation with Met. Hey, that, you know, Mel, Nick, the team, we're past that. We're past that. Now it's moving forward. But sometimes we may get together with Met, as I just discussed with Mr. Ortega at dinner last night, deals that work for this agency's benefit. We're working together. But he also would tell you those things should be protected from PRA because they involve price, contracts, quantities. I can't believe for a second that we would suggest these things be not covered under privilege. It's just simply nuts. So the conclusion on this one is clear. California law does not restrict the attorney-client privilege or work product protection based on the reporting relationship of counsel within a public agency. Accordingly, legal communications and work product involving counsel retained by the general manager are fully protected under applicable legal standards, provided confidentiality and other foundational criteria are maintained. So therefore, to the board, my motion is that we combine the two contracts, 10.2 and 10.3. 10.2 has the privilege language in it. All we have to do is, you see 10.2 has got the from 480. Just bring that into 10.3 has the 480 from. Bring that into 10.2. Change it to report to and managed by the GM, and authorize the GM to execute the contracts.
So,
that's the motion.
So, Mr. Medaffer, and I've heard your motion, and I think to accomplish that, what I'm going to ask is that this item then be continued and be brought back with that docketing in 30 days. The general manager will work on what we need to do in that 30-day time period. But in order to docket it in the way that you're describing, that is going to require me to bring it back. So I'm happy to entertain that continuance. I have a number of speakers here. I don't know if they still want to speak on the item, but
well, that would be fine with me, and I would presume you would just extend the existing Brownstein contract by 30 days.
Yeah, I would need to work within my authority, general manager's authority. The bandwidth there, I think, as you all know, is $150,000, and I think I have the ability to do that.
Okay. And I have no problem with that, Mr. Serrano. I'll withdraw the motion.
I would just like to say, when it came to the discussion on the closed session, to the extent my voice was raised and there was some temper there, I apologize for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Director Paul.
Yeah, I actually wanted to speak about the contract, but are you my mic is on. Can you hear me? Wow. How about now?
Yeah, better.
So are you tabling this item?
Yeah, based off what I just heard in the motion that was made, I would like to do that.
Can we vote on whether to table it or to leave it as is? We've only heard from one person, and now
No, I have other speakers, and I'm happy to continue through discussion, but that's just my recommendation in order to achieve what was requested.
A motion to table does require a vote. It is debatable but not amendable. And its purpose is to set aside on a temporary basis a pending main motion.
All right. So my questions were on the 10-2 contract. You said that these are vital and ongoing issues, but when we spoke on the phone the other day, I tried to ask you what were ongoing issues, and I didn't really get that answer.
We have an ongoing relationship with Imperial Irrigation District through the QSA. Those are ongoing contractual issues that are worked on consistently and are I'm not going to say routine, but
sure. Yeah, so Director Paul, on the QSA side of things, it's all Colorado River related. It's largely water rights matters, and the firm has represented us on the river since the negotiations occurred nearly 30 years ago. The continuation of items has to do with the joint stipulated order that we have with the Imperial Irrigation District and a number of non-governmental organizations on the Salton Sea. That's a state water board issue that is continuing and will likely be renewed here within a couple of years. There's also matters related to the federal delivery agreement with the Department of the Interior, just all part of the QSA contracts. Those are the ongoing issues.
Thank you.
Director Ray.
Thank you. I did have questions about the contract, but since the main table, I will skip those. But I did want to say that in case there's any confusion, the matter about this item being in closed session doesn't have anything to do with the Water Authority Admin Code. It has to do with the Brown Act. And there are only certain issues that can be conducted in closed session. Those are personnel matters, litigation, pending and or threatened, real property negotiations, labor negotiations, grand jury testimony, public security. And with the contracts can be, with an exception, in closed session if they contain legal strategy. And that is a very rare thing that happens. So these contracts do not belong in closed session. And if they come back to this board in closed session, I will not vote on them because they don't belong in closed session. And people who sit on this board and who have been a public servant should be familiar with the Brown Act and know they don't belong in closed session.
Director Leahy.
Thank you. We have spent the last 6 hours talking about how we need to do things differently, and yet here we are talking about how we need to continue to do something that we've done for the last 20 years again. And I think most of this board acknowledges that maybe the things that we've done the last 20 years don't need to be repeated, and we need to look at new ways of doing things. I would not support tabling this item. I would not support putting any of this in closed session. I would not support combining the two items. I agree with having them be separate. We do have Ms. Fromm as part of the first item. The scope that's in attachment A of the second item, none of that constitutes legal contract and legal services. That is support services provided by a professional service agreement. And those two do not have to be in the same contract. If and when she provides legal services, she can bill against the first contract. That is fine by me. This board and my colleagues know, I've said it before, I don't even believe that we should have the second contract to begin with. I would be amenable to having it for 1 year in order to transition these services and the support of the Met delegates to our well-qualified staff. We have the experience on staff. We have the experience and knowledge with our general manager. I understand that there needs to be a transition period. I would be supportive of the one item for the second contract to be 1 year, but I will say no matter what, I won't support combining them, nor will I support them being a legal services contract or being in closed session. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Myers.
Thank you. You know, when I looked at the contracts and these items, initially it looked kind of straightforward to me. And so, you know, this discussion that we're having now is I guess, a little surprising to me. It seemed to make sense, and so maybe I want to make sure I understand it. As I understand it, that we have kind of two boxes now. Because of the fact that we have the settlement agreement, and we don't need to be constantly looking at all of legal service, looking at everything happening at Met through a legal lens, that we're looking at the historical knowledge of Chris Fromm and probably other folks at Brownstein for historical knowledge, for strategic advice, which is not legal. We hire a lot of people who are not lawyers, that's not under the attorney-client privilege, to provide strategic legal advice, and that, so I'm looking at this contract and that makes sense. And I'm supportive of, and I was supportive of having a strategic contract like this to be able to continue to take advantage, at least for now, while we're in this transition period, of the knowledge of Chris and other people to do it. And then I saw the other part of the contract that says, okay, professional services, the as-needed part of the contract, and that made sense to me too, because it certainly can happen that during the course of Chris or someone working with her is dealing with an MWD issue that has a legal component to it that may require legal research or may require legal advice, that Brownstein goes to the general counsel, who, at least I understand, maybe there's some debate about this, but I understand is, you know, as our general counsel is the one who deals with our lawyers, would go to general counsel and say, hey, we've got a legal issue here at MWD. I need some as-needed time to be able to address this issue under the legal services contract, right? And that would be protected by the attorney-client privilege. So you've got the two contracts. They seem to have separate purposes. Am I missing something in that regard? And I'm happy to hear from general counsel or Mr. Madaff or Director Madaff or anyone else, but there seemed to be logic in the way this was being proposed, and so I'm a little perplexed about kind of where we are right now.
That's precisely the approach that was taken.
I mean, obviously it's the will of the board, but you know, I'd propose that we, I don't know if we're in a position right now, but I propose that we just that we move for 10.2 and 10.3, and based upon the discussion we've had here, determine whether we want to go forward with this or whether we want to address it further down the road.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion by Director Myers, a second by Director Freehoff. I also have Director Fong-Sakai.
Yeah, to 10.2 and 10.3.
Sorry, I was just notified that because they're agendized separately, you're gonna have to vote on them separately. So which is your pleasure? The first one?
Oh, okay. All right. So I guess the motion would be on 10.2, and then after that, 10.3.
Okay. So I have a motion from Director Myers. You still want a second, Director Freehoff?
Yes, please.
All right. I got a few other folks who want to speak. Director Fong-Sakai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that being a Met delegate for the last few years, that having Chris Fromm and the Brownstein team working with us makes us stronger. She has specific insight and history as to the Water Authority and also Met, being that she has served on both boards. We do talk strategy with Chris Fromm all the time, and including legal interpretations and as part of that strategy. And to me, I think it's important that those things be discussed privately and not open to all of the public to see how we are planning to move ahead on specific items.
Director Scalzetti.
Thank you, Chair. This brings up a super interesting fact to me that what I believe that we were ending litigation and the delegates needed some support not to do any legal findings in the middle. And I think it's really important that we keep sending this message to Metropolitan that we're not keeping a lawyer inside to direct our delegates what to say and what to do and how to do it and how to say it and all those things. And I just think that we're going backwards because I've been up to Metropolitan myself and watched our delegates speak. And when it is preconceived and wrote out for them, that the whole rest of the board just ignores what they say. It's true. I've sat there, I've watched it. They don't want to hear about Brownstein's papers that write for our delegates. They want to know that we're true people and we really mean that we're doing the public service and we're there to do what we're supposed to be doing there along with the Metropolitan board members, bringing reliable, affordable, clean water to our region. This whole game of what to say and what to do should be over. We've got to send a good message. Do we need legal services right now? No. Do we need support of the delegates? There's always a time in our major leagues that we need to pull up the people from AAA. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to do it for the Steelers this year. I mean, seriously, we've got to depend on the knowledge and the resources that we have, and they're actually really good. We have good support. We have good, knowledgeable people. We need to stand on our own 2 feet, and we need our delegates to step up a little bit too, to be able to write and say how they believe and vote from their heart and from their conscience and not just be told what to do. So I really think that I'm hoping that we start off in a new era, a new foot. There's nothing to say if we need her in the future that she's not available for hire or other people aren't available for hire. There's a million other people out there too. We need to try this on our own. And if we're really talking about cutting costs and cutting things, come on, you guys wanted to cut little things. Let's cut. Thank you.
Director Yermani.
Through the chair, just for my point of clarification, didn't you request or recommend to table this subject?
If we were going to combine the 2 contracts, I was going to recommend that is the best course of action for us to do that, if that was the board's prerogative. Director Ray.
Thank you. I don't know if we're combining or what we're doing, but I would just like to say that, to echo Director Scalzetti, we really need to, move forward with the optics that we're trying to work with Metropolitan. And we have an 8-person department here at this agency that is highly qualified and extremely knowledgeable in everything that is going on at Metropolitan. And we need to make use of them in an efficient manner. And the delegates are also very intelligent people, and I don't know what they would need the support for on the contract for 10.3. So I don't support 10.3 at all, because I think that we have the qualified people here at this agency and that the delegates have enough knowledge and intelligence to fly on their own. So I don't support 10.3 at all, and I certainly don't support combining them.
So just a little bit of clarity here. So we do have a motion on the floor for 10.2. This is the Brownstein contract that relates to the Colorado River and the QSA. So I just want to be clear, that's the motion on the floor. So directors, I'm going to ask you to rein in your comments to that contract specifically. That motion was made by Director Myers and seconded by Director Freehoff. Any further discussion on the 10.2 contract? Director Medaffer.
Yeah, I will definitely support 10-2 and urge a yes vote on that, and we can discuss 10-3 when that comes up.
Any further discussion from members of the board on 10.2? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Acosta?
Yes.
Flessy?
Yes.
Paul?
No.
Coates Hedberg?
Yes.
Director Coates Hedberg?
10-2 is
10.2 is the legal services agreement with Brownstein.
yes.
Scalzetti?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hilliker?
Yes.
Director Yamani?
Yes.
Leahy? Myers?
Yes.
Roback?
Yes.
Quaylen?
Yes.
Heidemann?
Yes.
Norman?
Yes.
Abdullahi? Ayala?
Yes.
Buckowitz?
Yes.
Fong Sakai? Macedo? Madaffer?
Yes.
Chair Serrano?
Yes.
Director Vespi?
No.
Whitburn?
Yes.
Secretary Lyons?
Yes.
Director Freehoff?
Yes.
Castaneda?
Yes.
Arant? Miller?
Yes.
Ray? Director Abdullahi? On 10.2, legal services agreement. Director Abdullahi? Yes, thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Director Myers.
I'll now move for the adoption of item 10.3, the non-legal professional services contract with Brownstein Hyatt.
Director Madaffer.
So I would recommend that 10-3 be returned to the general manager and the general counsel and come back next month. And it's fine to come back in open session. I have no objection if that's the will of the board. On the matter of what I was hearing, I forget who said it. Yeah, this isn't about giving memos to the Met board from our delegates. I don't think that's happened for months. That kind of went away. What this is about, let's just say, for example, our Met delegates, your Colorado River Board representative is in the middle of negotiations with Met using the lawyer referenced in 10.3, that's Chris Fromm of the Brownstein Group. And we're dealing with the general counsel at Metropolitan and constructing a water exchange, a sale, maybe to Arizona, maybe to another member agency. So Marcia Scully is the general counsel. She's covered by attorney-client privilege because she's the GC. But is she going to want to deal with a lawyer that isn't covered under attorney-client privilege, where then those discussions on price and terms are discoverable? That's the only reason I think this should be reconsidered as a matter that should maintain privilege. And I think that's the big issue that we're dealing with here. Mr. Edwards doesn't feel that this should be privileged. He cites ethical issues in an unseen memo. So maybe he could come back and prove his points so this board has more information. But I think the board's being played here. You don't have enough information. And no, we're not using Chris Fromm of the Brownstein firm to send memos to the Met Board. Those days are over. Litigation's over. Now we're talking about how can we constructively go forward to get things done, and in a way that when we're cutting a deal with, let's see, Semi-Tropic, and how much they're going to charge for water, how much we're going to charge, is that going to be public? I don't think it should be. Those things need to be confidential until all parties are in agreement. Anyway, I would ask that, while I respect Mr. Myers in your motion to move it forward, I think it's half-baked. I really think some additional information should come back to the board. I'm not going to support 10.3, not because I don't support the contract, I do. But I think it ought to come back next month. So if the motion fails, there's nothing that keeps the general manager under his authority from starting the contract, immediately, and then it come back to this board for ratification for the full, period, the remaining 23 months. I just think we need more information, and I would ask the board's consideration for that.
Mr. Madaf, is that a motion or is that?
We've got a motion.
No, I'm just responding that I'm going to vote no on the motion on the floor.
Understood.
But I'd certainly make it as a substitute, but we don't allow those here, so I'd have to get it voted down on. I'd encourage a no vote on 10-3.
Okay. Thank you. I'm still looking for a second to Director Myers. So, thank you. So now we have a motion and a second. So now I can enter into discussion. Director Leahy.
Thank you. And while I understand your concerns, Director Madaffer, I think in the examples that you just laid out, all of those services would be billed under the contract that the board just voted on approving. So I don't see an issue with any confidentiality or any issue with Metropolitan's general counsel wanting to negotiate with any of either special counsel or our own general counsel. All of that would be billed under and fall under the contract that this board just approved. I would also ask that we all continue to maintain our decorum and professionalism in how we treat each other in this room. We are all here to do a job, and we all need to be respectful of each other and the positions we hold. And if there's comments about concerns about the level of professionalism or expertise, I ask that those not be made on the public floor and can be held separately. But we need to all be representing ourselves and this board and the professionalism and treat each other with respect. And I take exception to some of the comments and insinuations that have been made here today. Thank you.
Director Freehoff.
I'm sorry, my comment was what Director Leahy mentioned, that my understanding, and if I can be correct if I'm wrong, is that the services that Director Madaffer talked about would be covered under the item 10.2 that we just voted on. Is that correct?
To the extent they're necessary, yes. And I just wanted to say that I absolutely agreed with what Director Madaffer said. I was the principal negotiator on the Metropolitan Settlement. I represented the Water Authority when we went through the semi-tropic negotiation. We have counsel to the extent we think we need additional outside resources, and Ms. Fromm becomes one of those resources. It's important. That is why we included her in the legal services contract.
Thank you.
Director Acosta.
Thank you. I'm looking at the agenda and reviewing what specifically staff's recommendation is, and this particular contract is for delegate support for a period of 2 years for a not-to-exceed amount of $480,000. So I'm wondering if you could go over the scope. I know that that's in the last page after the agenda, right before the calendar for this upcoming year. There is a one paragraph on the scope, just so we're all clear about what the scope is. And this dovetails well with Director Freehoff's and Director Leahy's comments a minute ago about what actually is in this agenda item in terms of scope of the contract.
Yeah, Director Acosta, I can go over that. So what you have before you is a 2-year contract with a not to exceed amount of about $480,000. You get to that through a $20,000 a month retainer with Ms. Fromm. There are no additional add-ons, if you will. I'm just kind of paraphrasing, right? No additional hours. It's a set retainer. That's what we're billed each month. The reporting structure of the contract is where she reports to me, the general manager, and then in consultation with the imported water director, we help the delegates through their activities at Metropolitan. So those activities at Metropolitan that we would anticipate, this is going to be a different level of service, if you will, with Chris Fromm. It used to have a number of other hours, a higher retainer associated with it. So, the idea of writing delegate reports, et cetera, that type of work, I don't anticipate that. This will largely be based on policy discussions with the delegates, with myself. It does have to do with relationships, and it does have to do with politics. In a very straightforward way, that's the way I view her support with the delegation going forward. We will be leaning much more heavily on staff for technical support, whether that's reviewing Met agendas, attending Met meetings. Certainly, I will candidly tell you, it's not worth Ms. Fromm's time or worth our time for the $20,000 to have Ms. Fromm watching an MWD meeting, right? Then that's just sort of incompatible with the new service arrangement that we have. So it will be that type of relationship going forward, which I think we've all discussed is different than how it's been in the past. I hope that helps.
Thank you. And just to wrap up, it does seem that there were comments made earlier about having the in-house staff resources to be able to do all the work. I don't think all the work can be done by them. I do think it's helpful to have an external consultant, professional services contract, but with heavily augmented by staff. And just as the GM described, I think that's an ideal situation going forward. And we can review it again. It's a 2-year contract, so it's something that we can see if this works. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Scalzetti.
Yeah, just along the lines of Director Acosta. So this $20,000 retainer per month is as needed, or is if she only works 1 hour or 20 hours? How does that work?
Well, that's the nature of the retainer. She will not be working just 1 hour.
But we're paying $20,000 no matter what.
The Water Authority has contractual relationships exactly in that form. I think many of our member agencies have the same. At least my experience over the years is that sometimes you lean more heavily on an individual in 1 month rather than the other.
Absolutely.
And you're still charged the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Castaneda, excuse me.
Thank you. Mr. General Manager, in the spirit of what we've been spending a lot of time here today, I heard a lot of turning over every stone. We've heard every penny counts. We've cut to the, I even heard cut to the bone, which I'm perplexed by that particular characterization. Do you ever see a situation, whether it's in a year, 2 years, 5 years, where our staff, which I'm sure we pay a lot of money to, can handle this job on their own?
Yeah, I think that we can get to that point. What I think is important for all of us to consider as we deliberate over this is that there are going to be some very technical demands on staff that Ms. Fromm wouldn't do anyways, right? So we review engineering reports, we give financial recommendations, things of that nature. What staff does not have the ability to do is stay overnight in Los Angeles, for instance, and cultivate a relationship with other members of the community. So I can do that, Mina can do that, and so that's kind of the pivot, that's the transition to, I think, a future that you're talking about. But I don't think that that's an expectation that I have of staff to develop those political relationships.
Well, when I mean
with
in-house,
others.
I mean you included and obviously the people that work for you. So does that sort of materialize within 2 years?
I think it remains to be seen. I mean,
we were lamenting $100,000 or $50,000 for the water garden, which I can tell you, I can go to 10 doors, you pick them, and basically if you ask them, you want me to pay an attorney to write memos for our staff for $20,000 a month, or pay $50,000 to the water garden so they can go and take advantage of those opportunities. I think I know how the outcome of that would be. So again, I'm not suggesting that this end tomorrow or the next year or something, but I really believe we need to be on a straight and deliberative track to basically bring this all in-house and reduce our, and not just this contract, but reduce our reliance on outside consultants, or do the inverse. But we have to do one or the other. So I'm gonna support the motion, but I think that we really need to have that commitment from management. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Fonseca.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have heard some people in here as kind of saying that the Met delegates don't think on our own, that we're not capable of saying what's on our mind. The Met delegates are some of the hardest working people on this board. Unless you have been there, you don't know how much time it takes to read all of the documents, to make phone calls, to build relationships, to figure out what's going on up there, because frankly, there's a lot going on up there. There's a lot of projects. There's a lot of things in progress that we have shielded you a lot from. As far as having the support, we recently, in the last few months, have lost two very senior members of our Met staff. Amy retired, and Liz recently left us. These were very senior people, and I'm sure that eventually we hope to replace them, but we are not there yet at this point. Mina's doing a fine job with what we have, but we still have holes in our staffing. The Brownstein Group is not writing memos for us. They are not telling us what to say up there. We do the research, we meet with our staff here, and we make up our own minds as to what we're going to say up there. Anything we can have from Brownstein or from the staff is always greatly appreciated. The analysis that we get from staff and from Chris Fromm is invaluable. And a lot of times that can be legal analyses also. And that doesn't mean that we're in a lawsuit. It means that they have specific insight and expertise and history, and they know how things have played out. And with her legal background, she has the ability to give us that sort of information. I am in favor of maintaining privilege with any attorneys that we have, including the Brownstein Group, because we can be talking strategy, and this is not something that I want to be available in open session or to any member of the public that can come in the door and ask for it. So with that, I would like to see us further this discussion to maintain our privilege, and the board, we have that ability to protect ourselves.
Director Arant.
Yeah, whenever we start debating legal issues, I remember I did have a 3-unit business law class at Cal State. It doesn't qualify me to understand what was just going on between Jim and General Counsel. So just for an operative standpoint, if under 10.3, Chris Fromm, in her role to advise our delegates, senses that there is a potential legal issue, wouldn't she not advise General Counsel or the General Manager and say, hey, we think this might turn into something we need to either get special counsel for, or I provide services under 10.2? Would that, I mean, am I accurate on that?
That's precisely right. It wouldn't be any different than, for example, my dealings with staff. When we're talking about a contract, or we're talking about any legal issue that comes up and I get involved.
Yeah,
the privilege doesn't exist in one individual.
Thank you. I'm just trying to figure it out. Thank you.
Director Flessy.
Thank you. I appreciate all of our Met delegates and what they bring to the table, and I also appreciate quite a bit of what the Water Authority staff also brings to the table. Obviously, I don't think that they're ready to cut the ties just yet, so I'm wondering if there's something that we can do that's a little bit in between. If we can take that 2-year and possibly review after 1 year. Maybe it's a 2-year contract with an or a 1-year contract with an option to renew for a year, and kind of see where we're at and see how the delegates are doing and seeing how staff's doing with coming up to speed. But I think it's something that we do need to start taking more away from that contract and be a little bit more independent, like we're all talking about. So maybe there's something more to meet in the middle.
Director Flessy, just in response, I would say that that is something I think the Imported Water Committee should consider, just if they want to consider that review at a certain point. Then the conversation can be docketed at any time. Director Myers, as the Imported Water Chair, I see you on the legs.
Well,
still doing that after 2 years.
I'm going to take
That I was going to say that if for those who have concerns about the contract in total and who are considering voting no on 10.3, that I would entertain and consider an amendment to make it a one-year contract with an option to renew for another year. So I would support that. And so that's I don't know if I would support that amendment.
I would second that.
That'd be the second.
With the understanding that would be 200,000.
Well, it would be
the 1 year amount.
The same terms, but it would be a one-year contract with an option to renew for another year.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Oh,
That would require us. I understand where everybody's going. That would require us to go back and renegotiate. This is Dan has already talked to Ms. Fromm about this contract. This is what was landed on. I will say that it is terminable by the Water Authority with a short notice. So in effect, it's
okay,
a 2-year deal.
I'll withdraw then. I understand what you're saying, and I'll withdraw that. That's fine. My only other comments is I want to thank Director Fong Sakai for her comments, and I do appreciate how hard the MWD delegates work and the hard work that they do and the conclusions they come on their own. So I want to make sure that my comments don't imply anything differently regarding to legal services. But I do believe that the case has sort of been made that we have the approved legal services contract, and so if an issue comes up that I believe that the comment's been made, if an issue comes up that may be legal in nature, that's exactly what should happen. A discussion. That's what I would expect to have happen. A discussion. This is a legal issue. It becomes an as needed under the legal services contract. And we don't have an attorney-client privilege issue.
Director Scalzetti, one more time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Serrano, just to the point that you just made, Neil, that's why I thought the two contracts should just be combined. That's why I said it at the beginning. Just to Director Arant's point, well, if it doesn't look like it, needs to be underprivileged, that's why I thought it should just be all one. But again, as much as I agree and support everything that Director Fong Sakai just said, I want to support having this continued contract under the 2 years. And if, the will of as much as I'd like to vote no because I'd rather have it come back, but I'm also not stupid and I listen to the board and I feel that the board feels that having it with no privilege, if that's the direction you all want to go, that's to me, I just think it puts the authority at peril. Well, the Martians are invading. I'll stop.
No, that's actually Director Miller. Director Miller?
Director Miller, did you have your hand up to speak?
Okay, so I'm going to land this plane right now. So I appreciate everyone's discussion on this. I think one thing that I would just leave for this board to consider is the balance that I think we're going to have to strike and what we are going to have to come to a consensus on about this notion about whether these services can be brought in-house, acknowledging that those are ongoing expenditures that we are going to have to add to imported water, or whether we rely on this work. I think again, I've heard people say that we need to cut staff today. I've heard people say that the salaries are too high. We got to make a decision on where it is that we want to go. And honestly, that's why we're here in this room, to have that discussion, whether we want it to be long-term or whether we want it to be short-term. No question, though, my priority in this stands about it has to be a new day at Metropolitan. And I don't care who you are in this room. If you're out of this room and representing the authority, that is what we endeavor to pursue. And so I think ultimately, the conversations about staff and contracts, that is going to be an ongoing discussion for which we're just going to have to make some decisions on about what we're going to want to do. But the second piece is that we need... at this point, I'm going to call for the vote at this point.
Thanks, Chair Serrano. I've refrained from talking. Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you, Director Miller, unfortunately. Yeah. If we all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move to the vote. I have a motion from Director Myers, a second from Director Freehoff. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Acosta.
Yes.
Flessy.
Yes.
Paul.
No.
Can you hear me now?
Coates Hedberg.
No.
Scalzetti.
No.
Vice Chair Hilliker. Director Yamani. No. Leahy.
No.
Myers.
Yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Roback.
No.
Quaylen.
No.
Heidemann.
Yes.
Norman.
Yes.
Abdullahi.
No.
Ayala. No. Bakowitz. No. Fong Sakai. Macedo.
Yes.
Madaffer.
No.
Chair Serrano.
Yes.
Vespi. Director Vespi.
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Director Vespi. No. Thank you. Whitburn.
No.
Secretary Lyons.
Yes.
Director Freehoff.
Yes.
Castaneda.
No.
Arant. Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Ray.
No.
Was that a no?
That's a no.
Thank you. One second.
Return next month. Come back next
Motion
month.
failed to pass at 71.134%.
My wife's gonna go, what do you want for dinner? I'm gonna go, I don't know. We need to do a motion. I don't know. Yes.
All right. Thank you all very much. Moving on to special reports. Item 11A is the General Manager's report. Mr. Denham.
Nothing to report.
General Counsel.
Nothing to report.
Sandag report. Secretary Lyons stepped out. Sandag subcommittees. Director Macedo. Or, sorry, Castaneda.
In the interest of time, I'm just going to file mine on paper with the secretary.
I love that. Thank you very much. Regional Planning Committee, Director Yamani.
Nothing to report.
Any AB 1234 compliance reports from directors? Seeing as for once that we have no closed sessions on today's agenda, there being no further business, the Board of Directors meeting is now adjourned.